When I got a call from my ex on a live show. I was actually squatting on the toilet, trying hard to go. He took a deep breath and said, "Sorry. I didn't react right away." As soon as the call ended, it went viral. Everyone was talking about how Edric, the usually aloof movie star, had suddenly teared up during the recording. Chapter 1. It was one of those rare days without any events lined up. After revenge eating 5 spicy chicken wings and a McFlurry, I clutched my stomach and sat on the toilet, ready to answer nature's call and confirm Newton's first law. And that's when Edric's call suddenly came in. Staring at the number that hadn't lit up in 3 years, I hesitated for 2 seconds and was just about to answer. My hand slipped, and I hung up. I could have smacked myself in frustration. Back when we broke up, we'd thrown down some pretty harsh words. If either of us couldn't let go, we were a dog. Now that Edric had actually called me, I was dying to know what he wanted to say. But my pride held me back from calling him back. What if he just dialed me by mistake? Then wouldn't I look eager? Just as I was hesitating, the phone rang again. The second I picked up, I regretted it. What came through before Edric's voice was a fart. I awkwardly moved the phone away a little. "Ruby?" His voice sounded a bit hoarse, even dry. I was just about to speak when I felt an intense, pressing urge below. Oh no. I tried to hold it in, quickly realizing, with a sinking feeling, that our ancestors were right. When nature calls, there's no escape. As my soul prepared to ascend to higher realms, I let out a couple of strained grunts, forgetting I was still on the call. For a moment, Edric's breathing seemed to pause. He took a deep breath and said, "Sorry for interrupting, you two." "What do you mean, you two? What are you apologizing for?" "I'm actually..." Beep. I stared at the abruptly ended call, deep in thought. Wait, did he misunderstand? Chapter 2. I was about to indulge in some beauty sleep. But as soon as I put on my eye mask and started to drift off, my best friend Gil bombarded me with messages, jolting me awake. She poked me furiously. "Look at the trending topics. Tell me honestly, was that you on the phone with Edric?" I opened the trending list, and almost every top slot was occupied by his name. Explosive hashtag Edric's ex-girlfriend hashtag. Hot hashtag Edric RR hashtag. Viral hashtag Edric says he'll never date again hashtag. I frowned and clicked on the video link Gil sent. It turns out Edric was on a live broadcast today. Midway through, the host asked each guest to call the least contacted person in their phone. These shows usually go over the script beforehand, so the stars know what to expect. Edric could have just called a random relative or friend, but he insisted on calling his ex-girlfriend. I assumed he was doing it for the show, but then I froze when I saw the nickname. Silly little sweet potato lover RR. This guy is so lazy he couldn't even change the contact name. Seeing Edric's face turn darker than a storm cloud when the call connected left me speechless. What on earth was he thinking? Since the call was brief, the audience couldn't hear much on speaker. After he hung up, I watched Edric's eyes turn red. Following the plan, he was supposed to cue the next segment. But his voice shook, and he turned his back to the camera, the sharp-eyed cameraman catching him wiping his eye with his thumb. The host took the mic and tried to console Edric. "I get it, Edric. Let bygones be bygones. Just say the word, and look, there are fans across the country holding signs, ready for you to." "What the hell do you get?" Edric gave a cold laugh. "Dating? Ha! I wouldn't even if I were a dog. From this moment forward, I have no exes online. If I did, I don't acknowledge them. I'm done with dating. It's not happening in this lifetime." Wow. Looks like I really got under his skin. Thanks to his remarks, fans were in an uproar, scouring the internet for the ex-girlfriend who had driven Edric to swear off love forever. Sweating, I watched as they combed through every female lead and supporting actress he'd ever worked with, even minor extras. I breathed a sigh of relief knowing Edric and I had never been in a project together. But just as speculation reached a peak, a new post from starlet Rachel diverted everyone's attention. Chapter 3. Before I could even finish watching, Gil's rant came flooding in. Rachel's such a damn clout chaser. She suddenly posts a photo of a sweet potato dessert with a hug emoji. What does that even mean? Ugh. I'm livid. Now everyone thinks she's Edric's ex, and she gained over 800k followers in half an hour. Unbelievable. I'm so mad. Could you stand next to her somewhere and completely overshadow her? Just crush her with your presence. The voice message was blaring in my ear, so I quickly turned down the volume and replied. Let her do whatever she wants. Even if she wants to ride on Edric's fame, it's got nothing to do with me. Thinking back to Edric's harsh words, I felt a slight twinge of irritation. Edric's so hot-tempered, if Rachel manages to win him over, I genuinely wish her luck. I said it honestly, partly because my impression of Rachel wasn't exactly positive. We used to be with the same company, and more than once, she used her connections to take roles I was up for, leaving me jobless. After I terminated my contract, she even circulated plenty of smear articles about me. But times have changed. I can now secure scripts on my own merits, while her performances fail to leave any impact on the audience. Go on with your act, then. Gil sighed in exasperation. Who was it that cried their heart out after the breakup, too attached to toss the keychain Edric gave them, even though the paint was chipping? And who was it that made a fake account to rate his new show the moment it dropped, only for the system to flag them for over-the-top gushing like a bot? And who, after seeing a rumor about him and a co-star, couldn't sleep all night and insisted on coming to my place the next day to sing karaoke until their voice gave out? Who could that have been? It wasn't you, was it, Ruby Ray? No way, right? I rubbed my temples. That was all in the past. Just as I was about to give up and let Gil's relentless teasing win, I heard her yell out. What is Edric's problem? First, he swears off dating forever, then pulls this stunt. Girl, go sign up for a dating show and rub it in his face. Go flirt with some hotties and drive him crazy. I was about to ask why Gil suddenly got so riled up when I saw the notification pop up from my side account. At Edric just followed fan account at It's Rachel. Well. Rachel Rose, same initials, RR. The fans, who had been hunting for Edric's ex, immediately went wild. I froze, staring at the screen. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. A sudden meeting invite from my manager also caught my attention. It was 8 p.m., outside of work hours. Given Slay's familiarity with my schedule, any last-minute changes or script discussions would usually be sent to me in written form. She's been with me long enough that there've only ever been 2 times she urgently requested a meeting. Once when Edric and I were nearly outed, and once when Rachel aggressively spread false stories about me. So, if she's scheduling a meeting, it means the situation must be serious. My heart skipped a beat as I quickly accepted the invite. It took a full hour before I could get back to Gil. I had to admit, she had practically predicted it. Good news and bad news, what do you want to hear first? She tapped her desk, telling me to hurry up and spill. Just as you wished, I'm going on a dating show to meet some hotties. But Rachel and Edric are also on the guest list. Chapter 4. After Edric followed Rachel back, the show quickly announced that the two would be joining the dating show together. They'd partnered up twice before, and their reunion on the show was bound to spark speculation. With media outlets rushing to cover the story, a new wave of discussion soon exploded online. The massive promotional push made it clear they were highlighting this pair. I didn't really care about the director pushing their couple-y narrative. But my feed was flooded with rumors claiming Edric had only joined the show for Rachel. Feeling stifled, I turned my phone off to avoid it all. On the first day of filming, I arrived early at the villa. Yet, aside from Edric, no one else had shown up. Seeing this, the director quickly had the crew set up the cameras, giving us time to get acquainted. I glanced at the unopened camera lens and immediately understood. Rachel's uncle had likely invested a good amount to get her onto the show, and they'd probably wait to start the live broadcast until she arrived. To ease the awkwardness, I strategically picked the seat farthest from Edric, sneaking glances his way. He had shed his boyish look, now exuding a sharper, more mature charm. Just sitting there, he commanded attention. As I was stealing a look, he suddenly turned, and our eyes met midair. Total embarrassment takes just one split second. Seeing him get up and start walking over, I quickly closed my eyes, pretending to sleep. Edric stopped in front of me. His voice came in low and sarcastic. "Humph, Ruby, you have a boyfriend, yet here you are on a dating show. He must be really understanding. Who is he? Why can't he let this go?" I couldn't hold back. Springing up, I countered. "Edric. What nonsense are you making up in your head all day? I was using the restroom. Do you get that? The restroom. You may be getting more handsome, but your IQ seems to be tanking. And what are you laughing at? I'm telling you. Edric, long time no see." Rachel's sweet voice interrupted as she walked in, taking a seat right beside Edric with a knowing smirk. She stared at him for a moment before finally noticing me. With a forced smile, she greeted me. "Oh, Ruby's here too? Your makeup's really heavy today, I almost didn't recognize you." I looked at her ghostly pale face, layered in at least 3 coats of foundation, and felt the urge to roll my eyes, but stopped, remembering the live broadcast. One slip, and she'd use it against me again, costing me time and money to fight back. The moment Rachel arrived, viewers who'd seen the trending topics perked up. Why did Edric smile so sweetly as soon as Rachel showed up? +1. No wonder she's the ex he can't forget, I've never seen him look this smitten. This is love. Some people say they won't date, but here they are, eager as ever. Isn't anyone curious about what Edric was whispering to Ruby at the start of the livestream? I smell some gossip brewing. Let's not jump to conclusions up there. They're not even close, okay? I couldn't wish more for them to think I had nothing to do with Edric. While Rachel kept chatting him up, I quickly moved over to an inconspicuous corner of the couch. Lying alone on the sofa is way more comfortable. And, oddly enough, whoever the big, generous sponsor is, they offered a contract with figures more tempting than some big endorsements. After confirming with Slay, I found out they didn't even have a specific persona requirement for me. It's basically like being paid to do nothing. With a big sponsor splashing out, I can handle Rachel's antics just fine. Smiling to myself, I pulled up my puzzle game, fully prepared to treat this month of filming as a paid vacation. Chapter 5. After dinner, the host announced a compatibility game, with the results determining the next day's dates. According to the rules, each contestant had to be blindfolded and identify the person in front of them just by feeling the hand extended toward them. If both correctly guessed each other, they'd form a perfect match. Rachel was the first to stand before Edric. He had a faint, barely noticeable scar on his palm, making him easy to identify by touch. Sure enough, the moment he held out his hand, Rachel immediately exclaimed, "This is Edric." The livestream chat exploded. Rachel got it in 1 second. This is real couple compatibility. I'm in tears, she loves him so much. Can everyone stop spamming? I want to enjoy this love-filled moment. My turn was next. I felt Edric's hand and, quite honestly, shook my head. I can't tell. Rachel chuckled softly, her eyes showing a smug confidence. Don't worry, Ruby. This level of compatibility isn't something everyone has. The game soon reached the second round, where the guys guessed the girls. Rachel, brimming with anticipation, walked up to Edric, lifting her dress slightly. To match her pink outfit, she'd even worn a giant diamond ring on her ring finger, which was easier to recognize than his scar. But as soon as she extended her hand, Edric frowned the moment he touched it and muttered, "Whose hand is this? It's really poking me." Then he pulled back his hand and rubbed it. Rachel's sweet smile froze. And for a moment, the whole room was plunged into awkward silence. The livestream chat tried to smooth things over. Come on, Rachel's not the only one wearing a ring today. Edric not recognizing it is totally understandable. It's just part of the show's script anyway. We fans don't mind these little bumps. Edric, you big softy, go comfort Rachel already. She looks like she's about to cry. Rachel bit her lip anxiously. Before she could continue, Edric suddenly stepped sideways. According to the rules, if you can't guess correctly, you can switch to the next person. But the person standing to Rachel's right was me. I was a bundle of nerves, while the chat seemed relieved. Betting a penny, Edric's just switching partners to prove that he can't guess anyone, not even Rachel. Agreed with the comment above. Didn't expect Edric to be so warm-hearted despite seeming so straightforward. He's clearly a perfect match with Rachel. Ruby is beautiful, but maybe a bit too intimidating. Rachel's gentle white flower vibe suits him better. Trying not to panic, I looked helplessly at Edric as he stood in front of me. After the host urged me multiple times, I reluctantly pulled my hand from my pocket. I almost laughed. I bet Edric didn't expect me to extend a fist. But just as I was certain he'd never figure it out, Edric calmly opened his fingers and gently wrapped his hand around mine. The familiar touch surprised me. A memory flashed. How, back when we were dating, I loved walking with our fingers interlocked at night. Edric used to tease me, saying my hand was so small it felt like holding a child's. Even if I made a fist, he could easily cover it. And now, he even brushed his calloused fingertips along the back of my hand. Right as my face heated up and I was about to pull away, Edric's voice rang out with certainty. Ruby. 3 seconds later, the chat exploded. Chapter 6. No way. Did I see that right? Edric actually recognized Ruby's hand. This is insane. Are reality shows even trying with these scripts anymore? Someone needs to rein this in. I'm getting a weird vibe between Edric and Ruby, can't quite put my finger on it. You're not alone. I'm betting there's definitely something between those two. I quickly stepped back, trying to laugh it off and ease the awkwardness. Edric has a sharp eye, I'll give him that. Impressive, really. Edric took off his blindfold and stared at me without a word, a hint of frustration in his eyes. Meanwhile, Rachel shot me a teary, icy glare that felt as sharp as a poisoned dagger. Feeling cornered by both of their gazes, I was squirming internally, wishing I could vanish into thin air, when the host finally came over to end the game. Since there was no successful pairing from either round, the show decided to add an impromptu Princess Carrie of Love segment. As I listened to the explanation of the rules, I was barely holding back my urge to comment. What kind of rule is? When the girl stands in front of the chosen guy, he does a Princess Carrie and spins her around 3 times for a match. No wonder this variety show on Melon TV is such a hit, they know how to create a buzz. Feeling a bit drowsy, I yawned and noticed, through tear-blurred eyes, that the host subtly signaled to Rachel. It looked like they were up to something. The box for drawing lots was brought on stage. Rachel quickly reached in first, pulled out a paper, and, surprise surprise, Edric's name was on it. With no particular expectations for this semi-forced interaction, I queued up and randomly drew a name, the trending pop star, Mike. After each pair of guests took their positions, the camera lens immediately focused on Edric and Rachel's side. Rachel adjusted her hair and gazed sweetly at Edric. Edric, I get dizzy easily. Just one spin would be enough. With that, she closed her eyes and stretched out her arms daintily, a bit faint and vulnerable. The chat was scrolling furiously, with Edric and Rachel's fanbase eagerly anticipating screenshots of this Princess Carrie moment. I glanced at Edric, only to see him standing expressionlessly, hands behind his back, like a stern old-school principal. After a long pause with no movement, the host finally asked if there was an issue. Edric looked down, his voice lazily indifferent. Hurt my hand a few days ago. Can't manage a carry. The internet erupted in laughter. Hurt his hand. Edric, do you remember that single-arm workout photo you posted yesterday? He sure knows how to decline politely but brutally. I think Edric just doesn't want to be with Rachel. She's a little clingy sometimes. The awkwardness finally ended with Rachel forcing a smile and saying, Edric should really take it easy. She didn't forget to shoot me a glare when she turned her back to the camera. As the other guests finished their interactions, I looked at Mike, who was a head taller than me but quite slim compared to Edric's broad, muscular build, and I struggled not to let my lips twitch as I advised. Maybe let's skip the carry. I'm honestly worried you might strain your back. Mike's pale face turned bright red as he nodded sheepishly, though he soon raised his head again, determined. For you, sis, I'll give it a shot. I lift water bottles every day in my room. Kiddo, I'd rather not have your fangirls chasing after me. I took a deep breath and patted his head. Be good. Edric, who was walking toward us, suddenly darkened his gaze. Mike suddenly turned around and sneezed more than 30 times on the spot. Chapter 7. Considering that guests who haven't completed the interactive mission cannot go on a date, I intentionally slept until noon the next day before getting up. The director probably feared that those staying at the villa would be sad, so he specifically mentioned that today could be a free day. I chuckled. The hardship of not having to wake up early to do makeup, laze around in bed, and still get paid, I was willing to endure it alone. After finishing my morning routine, as I was about to go downstairs to grab a sandwich from the fridge, I saw Rachel elegantly doing yoga on the carpet. Her fans started praising her, saying she truly deserved to be called the pure and diligent jasmine flower of the entertainment industry. When she saw me, she pretended to be surprised and looked up, saying, Oh my Ruby, do you wake up at this hour every day? If I woke up this late, I'd worry about my face being swollen. By the way, if you want to lose weight, I can take you to do body shaping exercises every morning. It's good for facing the mirror too. Want to mock me? Back when I was a stunt double on set, rolling and tumbling around, she was probably still at home throwing a princess tantrum at her family's company. After pondering for a moment, I watched her struggle to control her fierce muscles while doing high leg lifts and casually tied her hair into a bun with a wristband. Physical fitness isn't practiced like that. Then, in Rachel's puzzled gaze, I effortlessly demonstrated how to kick my toes over my head 3 times in a row in 5 seconds. After stopping, I smiled and asked her. Got it? Do you want me to demonstrate it again? Rachel was speechless. The barrage comments were shocked. Oh my god. Are those legs real? I declare Ruby the winner of this round. If I remember correctly, she didn't come from a professional background, and yet her basic skills are even better than Rachel's. Sob, the beauty is so cool, I love her so much, from today I am officially a fan of Sister. As an old fan of Ruby, she is a genius who can nail a fight scene in one go directed by director Steven. I suggest certain vase-like people not to provoke her easily. Pretending not to see her stiff expression, I turned and walked towards the kitchen, hiding my talents and fame. Feeling too pleased with myself, I had just stepped in when I ran into Edric, who was busy chopping vegetables. The black apron was tied over his crisp white shirt, outlining his lean waist. He had swapped his contact lenses for gold-rimmed glasses, exuding a restrained aura in every gesture. Fans started flooding the screen with hearts, praising his outfit as if he were the CEO of a cooking game. To avoid greeting him, I quietly walked past him from behind, planning to quickly grab a sandwich and run back upstairs. However, as soon as I opened the fridge, my stomach made an embarrassing growl. Beside me, the tomato beef stew that Edric was simmering emitted a tempting and rich aroma. This was his specialty dish, and every time he made it, I would boast about it endlessly. I looked at the dry instant noodles in my hand and suddenly felt like I was chewing on wax. Hesitating whether to shamelessly ask him for a meal, a deep chuckle came from behind me. Let's eat together, I made enough for 4 people. I immediately weakly nodded. Darn it, he knew how to seduce a woman's appetite with those hands of his. Chapter 8. I can't cook. Back when we lived together, Edric was always busy in the kitchen. To avoid feeling useless, I walked over to help him. Edric's cold eyes softened as he handed me a basket of avocados to wash. The kitchen space was designed to be spacious by the production team, yet the aisle between the sink and the table was unusually narrow. And Edric kept turning around frequently. His movements disturbed me, causing me to wash the avocados hastily. You forgot to add the fruit and vegetable cleaner. I didn't know when Edric had leaned in close, twisting open the bottle cap and handing it to me. His breath lingered near my ear, sending shivers down my spine. For a moment, I could even feel the warmth of his body through the fabric of his clothes. I didn't dare to look up at him, quietly saying thank you. The barrage of comments couldn't contain themselves. Am I mistaken? Edric already washed the avocados once, why did he say to add cleaner? Upstairs, what do you know? How else would they create physical contact? I think he's fishing for something. Even without special effects, you can feel the pink bubbles between these two, they're unexpectedly addictive. I see Ruby blushing. I was speechless. Seeing Rachel walking towards us, I quickly placed the washed items down and slipped into the living room. Edric cooked quickly. In less than half an hour, a sumptuous 4-course meal was laid out on the table. Rachel intentionally sat opposite Edric. As I was about to sit next to her, Mike had already pulled out the chair next to Edric for me. I was caught off guard and almost choked on my saliva. Mike blinked expectantly. Big sis, why aren't you sitting? With things having gone this far, I could only grit my teeth and accept his kind gesture. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Edric pause while setting the table, even pursing his lips. And in his expression, I somehow sensed a trace of grievance. Illusion, it must be an illusion caused by staying up late reading novels. Rachel had been chattering nonstop since we started eating. But I preferred to eat in silence. As for Edric, he didn't need to speak while eating, it might cost him his life. Mike initially politely echoed a few words but gradually lost interest. After realizing that no one was paying attention to her, she rolled her eyes and prepared to change the topic. I watched as she stuffed a piece of beef brisket into her mouth and exclaimed dramatically. Edric, your cooking skills are getting better and better. I really love all the dishes today. If there's a chance next time, I really want to try your boiled fish. Her intimate, almost coquettish attitude sparked endless imagination among the audience. Edric paused while cutting the steak, furrowing his brow and setting down his fork. But my ex-girlfriend couldn't eat spicy food. As I kept my head down, focusing on eating, suddenly I felt all eyes in the room focus on me. The barrage quieted for a moment before erupting into a heated discussion. Chapter 9. Oh no. Edric said his ex couldn't eat spicy food, but Rachel is famously fond of spicy food. Could it be that his ex-girlfriend is? I guess it's Ruby, I've never seen Edric's gaze linger on anyone so long before. Don't jump to conclusions so quickly, look at how upset Rachel looks. It would be strange if there was nothing between them. So heartbreaking, Edric needs to realize his feelings for Rachel quickly. I have to say, he clearly isn't into Rachel. I really don't understand how you guys can keep going on about this. Why did he drop a bombshell so suddenly? I frantically kicked off my slippers, desperately kicking Edric's shins under the table, hinting for him to say something to salvage the situation. But Edric seemed to have lost all senses at that moment, sitting there calmly as ever. Well, playing possum, isn't he? Not giving up, I continued tormenting his legs, awkwardly laughing. Edric's ex-girlfriend is picky, unlike me, I particularly love spicy food. He turned to look at me, suddenly reaching out to grab my ankle, his tone affectionate. Yes, she's quite delicate. I felt a slight pressure in his palm, as if warning me not to move. Thankfully, his actions were blocked by the table, out of the camera's view. I was left tingling from his touch, completely frozen. Viewers speculated wildly as to why Edric suddenly seemed so pleased. Even Rachel, with tears in her eyes, asked in confusion. Edric, what are you smiling about? Edric cleared his throat, pushing his glasses up seriously. Nothing, just thinking about some interesting things from the past. Under the threat of my frantic pinching on his back, he finally let go of me, calmly stood up to clean up the tableware. The barrage was oblivious to Edric's thug behavior, still admiring the muscular lines of his arms as he rolled up his sleeves. I watched his long and elegant figure, wiping the sweat off my forehead. When I think back to when we first started dating, he would blush even at holding hands. Occasionally, when I tried to chat with him under a blanket, he would be hesitant and shy for a long time. Even our first time, it was me who had to push him onto the bed. I never expected that the innocent Edric would turn into something so terrifying now, even learning to fight back. Mistakes were made, mistakes were made. I hurried back to the room as if escaping, burying my bright red face fiercely into the blankets. The way he looked, it truly is very heartwarming. Chapter 10. In the middle of the recording night, all the guests gathered in the living room to drink red wine. Somehow, the conversation shifted to talking about ideal types. This topic clearly piqued the interest of the entire room, with a vague and flirtatious atmosphere filling the air. Seeing this, the director suggested using a spin-the-bottle game to decide who would speak first. Everyone agreed. Following the direction of the bottle's neck, the first to speak was Mike. To my surprise, as soon as he came up blushing, he pointed at me and said, "My ideal type is a girl like Ruby. She's beautiful, talented, with a great personality. I think she's perfect." I looked at his fiery gaze, feeling a headache coming on, and responded with a polite yet slightly embarrassed smile. Honestly, even though Mike is very popular, he's not my type at all. The perfection in his eyes is just my professional demeanor in front of the camera. After some thought, I watched as the bottle slowly turned towards this side, cautiously opening my mouth. I don't have a clear concept of an ideal type, but any good-looking guy wearing a white tank top and gray sweatpants makes my heart race. Yes, especially if the tank top fabric is a bit tight, and the sweatpants are a bit loose. Playing it cool, I know what I'm talking about. The barrage mocked me for being old-fashioned, urging me to speak more if I knew how to talk. Feeling a bit dizzy, I rubbed my sleepy eyes and realized that Edric had disappeared at some point. And the next person up was him. After about 2 minutes, he still hadn't shown up. So, at the director's suggestion, we postponed to Rachel. She played with her hair, looking down for a while before saying, "I like boys who can wear a white shirt cleanly and neatly, preferably with a teardrop mole at the corner of their eye." In fact, the person I'm talking about is here right now. Everyone could guess she was talking about Edric. Some in the Atmosphere group couldn't help but start teasing. Wow, is this a confession? The barrage also started screaming. I'm so excited, my OTP is finally coming true. Go for it, Rachel, boldly guessed that Edric sneaked back to the room to prepare a gift for her. To those who said Ruby is Edric's ex, you better watch out, he's about to show up and slap you in the face. Rachel pretended not to see the barrage. As for the rest, I'll wait for that person. Sorry, I was a bit hot just now, went to change my clothes. Edric, with his back to the camera, walked down the stairs and past Rachel, sitting down next to me, who was stuck in a daze. Rachel's face turned red and then pale, the remaining words choked back down. The fans of that couple fell into a dead silence as if sealed away. However, as soon as the camera focused on Edric, the barrage went crazy. Can someone tell me why Edric suddenly changed into a white tank top and gray sweatpants? Why else? Of course, it's for Ruby to see. I bet she's 100% Edric's ex-girlfriend. Peter next to him is freezing, wrapped in a towel blanket, and he still says he's a bit hot, shamelessly obvious. Look at him, this cheap appearance, it seems that the cool Edric we saw before was all an illusion. Edric, clothes changed, but wife fell asleep, what to do, waiting online, urgent. Chapter 11. Actually, at that moment, I wasn't really asleep. I just didn't know how to face Edric, so I simply closed my eyes to avoid it. Feeling drowsy, I woke up in the early hours. At this point, most of the cameras were off, and the guests had all returned to their rooms to rest. I groggily opened my eyes and met Edric, who was covering me with a blanket. His gentle face in front of me overlapped perfectly with 3 years ago. As if nothing had changed at all. My heart trembled, and instinctively, I reached out to encircle his neck. I even buried my head against him, letting out a comfortable sigh. Until Edric's complaining voice came. You're hugging me so tightly, it seems like you really love the physical education uniform, Ruby. Ruby, my dear. He deliberately leaned in to whisper in my ear. Clearly imitating Mike's tone, but sounding incredibly enticing. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead for a moment, and I pushed him away abruptly, sitting up and grabbing my clothes to run upstairs. But he gently caught the corner of my clothes. Nervous, I didn't dare turn back. Is there something else? Edric's voice sounded somewhat helpless. The clothes you're holding are mine. Oh no. This is so embarrassing. I threw the clothes at him in frustration, scrambling up the stairs, wishing I could turn into a monkey and swing from the vines. That night, a malevolent spirit entered my dreams. He was wearing loose gray sweatpants, slowly approaching, demanding if I craved his body. Seeing that I wouldn't admit it, he tied me to a tree, saying he would teach me a lesson. In the morning, I looked at the faint dark circles under my eyes, feeling like crying but having no tears. Edric's seductive skills became even more refined, truly disturbing my mind. In the following days, I tried my best to avoid direct contact with him. Deep down, I had a vague answer to his approaching actions. But I also knew clearly that it was me who had initiated the breakup back then. After so long, I couldn't believe he would still be standing in the same place waiting for me. Chapter 12. As the recording was nearing its end, the production team somehow managed to get a boat and said they would arrange some sea activities for us. Most people chose challenging activities like surfing and rowing. I got a bag of feed from the team leader and ran to the deck to feed the seagulls. Feeding the seagulls was fake, but admiring handsome guys was real. From this angle looking ahead, I could see several male guests wearing low-waist swim trunks. I pinched my fingers to count their abs. How come that guy in red shorts only has 4? Disappointing. The guy in red shorts has 6, barely acceptable, but the hip-to-shoulder ratio is a bit off. And this guy in blue shorts. A soft voice sounded in my ear. Why don't you count how many abs I have? Just as I was about to answer, I turned my head and found Edric standing behind me, lips pursed. I didn't dare to meet those moist eyes, guiltily following the line of his neck downward. Wow, a perfectly defined 8-pack, his fair skin still had some droplets hanging on it, slowly dripping down along the grooves, truly tantalizing. The barrage went crazy. Feeling sorry for Edric, he circled around Ruby 7 or 8 times, and she still hasn't noticed him. He had to speak up himself. Feels like Edric could wrap Ruby's waist entirely with just one hand. This body shape debate is really interesting, folks. Edric, all these bad men need to be shark bait. In my wife's eyes, there's only room for me. Believing in the single life for 10 years, only hoping for their quick reconciliation. Perhaps the viewers' thoughts had an effect. The cruise ship suddenly jolted when it encountered waves. I slipped under my feet, falling straight forward, my lips brushing against his cheek. Edric quickly pulled me into his arms. The barrage rolled rapidly, lamenting why the kiss was on the face and not the lips. He held me tightly, I could even hear our heartbeats gradually overlapping. Panicked, I turned my head away, not daring to look at his expression. As the cruise ship gradually returned to calm, his hand still remained around my waist. I thought, some things couldn't be resolved by avoiding them all the time. Edric, In fact, We almost spoke at the same time. But the next second, we heard the director loudly calling him over to shoot a commercial. Edric took a deep breath, clenched his fist tightly. He reluctantly let go of me, saying, I'm leaving. Will my sister go look at other men now? If you want to look, go ahead, don't mind me. I won't blame my sister. Sad. Not at all, I am fine. I watched the director rushing over, urging him, gritting my teeth, thinking. Next time Edric calls me a sister again, I'll shut his mouth directly. Chapter 13. After Edric left, I splashed some purified water on my face, trying to calm myself down. Rachel had somehow approached me, kindly holding my hand. Ruby, the weather is so nice today, why don't you go down to the sea with them? Let me tell you, moving around a bit when you have nothing to do can help maintain your body fat, you know. I calmly withdrew my hand, feeling a strange attitude from her that couldn't be put into words. Because I can't swim. With my sincere killer move, Rachel was immediately choked and couldn't speak. I lowered my head to add some mint leaves to my drink, thus missing the fleeting cold light in her eyes. Just when I thought she wouldn't have anything more to say to me, she pulled out her phone and asked me to go to the deck to take a picture for her. A hint of doubt floated in my mind. Strange, my photography skills are universally recognized as bad, and she still asks me to help take a picture? Pouting, Rachel said. Please, please, everyone else is busy, and I can only find you. I looked at her warily, making sure she wouldn't follow me out only to have her picture taken poorly and be criticized. Watching Rachel trying hard to pose, I began to doubt my suspicions. Even after seeing the picture I took, she still showed a satisfied smile, praising my composition as very thoughtful. After returning her phone to her, Rachel squeezed out a sweet smile, pointing to the railing next to us. Ruby, stand here, and I'll take a picture of your back, adding a filter will create a great atmosphere. Without much thought, I turned around casually, intending to cooperate with her for a couple of shots. But at that moment, behind me, a pair of hands forcefully pushed me down. Rachel's voice from above sent chills down my spine. Ruby, do you know how jealous I am of you? Why should you easily get everything I want, and so many people like you? I want to see you in a miserable state. I tried to struggle, but was quickly submerged by the seawater. In the moment of fading consciousness, a familiar figure swiftly swam towards me. Chapter 14. I had a deep, heavy dream. In the dream, Edric and I were still supporting actors at the filming base. Due to his outstanding appearance and cold temperament, Edric had been excluded by other crew members many times, and he even got into a fight once. One day after filming, I happened to pass by him and gave him a band-aid and a rice ball. That's how Edric and I got to know each other. Later on, when we were together, we squeezed into a small rental house every day to talk about our dreams, rehearsing lines and actions that would never make it to the screen. If we faced unfair treatment on set, we would encourage each other, swearing that one day we would get back at those who played favorites. There were many unwritten rules at the base. Our daily efforts were often surpassed by someone who just took off a piece of clothing at a drinking party. Or by saying a few flattering words to the assistant director, one could get a recommendation opportunity that others fought for. But I knew, Edric and I were not the type to bow down to these people. Although we both came from ordinary families, we always had our own bottom line. By chance, he was noticed by the famous director Sun Won and began to shine. He signed with an agency, gradually gained his own fans, and even got asked for autographs at the airport. That year, I was still an unknown, delivering resumes everywhere every day. While genuinely happy for him, I also realized that the gap between us was growing. Once confident, I started becoming self-doubting, fragile, and sensitive. With various strange emotions growing inside me, I found that I couldn't face Edric as I used to. I no longer wanted to hold his hand and go out with him, even though he didn't mind being seen with a girlfriend. Many times, I would start arguments on my own, and he would lower his head to appease me. Feeling guilty, even though the fault wasn't his. The day Edric received a script for a hit drama lead role, I calmly called him and broke up over the phone, holding a certain anonymously sent photo of him. He was destined to shine on the big screen and not have all his hard work ruined by an embarrassing girlfriend. Who took the photo, who sent it, didn't matter. In this mixed-up circle, there wouldn't be just one person who saw him as a stumbling block. When Edric returned from his business trip, I had already moved out with my luggage. He frantically searched for me like a madman, crying and begging me not to leave. To make him give up, I said the harshest words I could think of. He thought I was angry and sent me many, many messages, his voice almost hoarse. I didn't reply. What he didn't know was that on the other end of the screen, I was also holding my phone, crying uncontrollably. After Edric's movie was released, the box office unexpectedly exploded. During the roadshow event in the city, the media reported that he was constantly looking around for someone. Wearing sunglasses and a mask, I sat in a corner watching Edric's eyes change from hopeful to incredibly lonely. No one knew why Edric, who should have been enjoying flowers and applause, had red eyes as he left. In the same year, I entered the company where Rachel was working and faced a lot of suppression. Later on, burdened with a hefty breach of contract penalty, I encountered Slay, who had been betrayed by a former artist. The day she approached me, her eyes were shining. "Hey, want to do something big with me?" Without hesitation, I nodded. Just because of one person, I wanted to meet him at the peak. Chapter 15. Various chaotic sounds echoed in my ears. I wandered through the white mist, unable to resist heading towards the most familiar place. "Ruby, wake up. Ruby, please don't scare me. Ruby." Who was calling so miserably, like summoning a spirit? A strong urge to cough came from my windpipe. I abruptly opened my eyes, spitting out a mouthful of seawater to push away that hand. "Stop pressing, if you keep going like this, you'll crush me to death." The person on top still refused to lift their head. I patted Edric's back, only to find him shaking uncontrollably. He kept calling my name, as if repeatedly confirming my existence. I hesitated, reaching out to touch his face, but was hit by large drops of tears on the back of my hand. It was hot, so hot that my heart started to panic along with it. It seemed like he always cried for me. My eyes stung, unable to help but console him. "All right, I'm fine now. How did you get so scared?" When Edric looked up, the damp eyelashes still couldn't hide the crimson red in his eyes. "Rachel almost killed you, I won't let her get away with it." I furrowed my brows, genuinely hating that ominous name, so I simply pressed my index finger against his lips. "Besides this, don't you have anything else to say?" "I do." His eyes were bright, like a lost puppy finding its owner again. Edric slowly leaned towards me, with a hint of confirmation in his eyes. "Actually, every time you stare at me like that, I really want to do something." I cupped his face and kissed him directly. Approved. Life is so short, I didn't want to waste any more time letting him confirm his feelings. They say when you love someone, even if you seal your lips, the fiery emotions will overflow from your eyes. At this moment, I was very sure that the man in front of me was full of me. Edric's breath trembled, reaching behind my head, and kissed me back passionately. The barrage of comments witnessing this scene went completely crazy. "Sweet death, I give up. I hereby declare that the two of you are banned from kissing for the rest of your lives." Family, I'm so excited in bed, I feel like twisting into a worm, wishing I could run 10 laps downstairs. Indeed, it's always sweeter to watch others fall in love. Edric has been completely trapped by Ruby. Could someone please move the director blocking the camera? He's really getting in the way. Edric and I embraced each other, watching the director's heartbroken expression as a single dog. "I'm begging you both, stop kissing, otherwise we won't be able to air the scene." Edric coldly smirked at the director, silently pulling me out of the frame. "Wife, let's continue at home, love you." Chapter 15. After docking, Rachel was taken away by the police. Actually, this area was shallow waters, and the boat was equipped with movable life buoys. If I hadn't choked on water, there wouldn't have been any danger to my life. She probably thought I was lying about not being able to swim and wanted to teach me a lesson. So, she planned in advance, deliberately bringing me to an angle where the camera couldn't capture. Unfortunately, she didn't account for the surveillance equipment on board meant to prevent theft. In a moment of error, she ruined her showbiz career. Her remaining fans also fled, ashamed to have once supported her. On the day the show ended, Edric and I made it official. The accompanying image was an old, yellowed photo. Although the two people in the picture were wearing extras costumes, they looked incredibly happy. As the audience sent their blessings, they also marveled at how our story had begun so early. 2 weeks later, I received the payment for participating in the Love variety show. Upon seeing the familiar name of the investor, I walked into the study and threw myself into Edric's arms. I knew it. Which idiot sponsor would offer such a high price? "Humph, I've caught your little secret." Setting aside the script in his hand, Edric hugged me, raising an eyebrow and chuckling. "It's just a little trick to chase my wife." Then, he lowered his head, pretended to be angry, and lifted me onto his lap. The floor is cold, why aren't you wearing shoes again? Ruby, it seems like the punishment I gave you last time was too light. Remembering the painful memories of being tormented by him all night, I quickly tried to say something to cover it up. A light bulb went off in my head, so I rubbed his face, speaking in a threatening tone. I seem to have forgotten something. Come clean, why did you insist on confronting Rachel that day? If he couldn't answer, he'd be sleeping on the floor tonight. A hint of awkwardness flashed in Edric's eyes. He took out his phone to explain. Actually, besides her, I also followed all the staff related to the show that day. I nodded coldly. You just didn't pay attention to me. He looked a bit embarrassed, covering his face. I told you, don't make fun of me for being childish. At that moment, I was thinking, if I did that, would you at least notice and care a little bit about me later? I even dreamt that night that you would call me jealously to question me. It wasn't until I woke up happy, laughing, that I realized it was all fake. His voice gradually lowered. Knowing this was his way of seducing me. I couldn't resist it, and in front of the bright French windows, I shared a lingering kiss with him. As for the fact that I love you, that's absolutely true. You fool, Edric, I'll be with you for the rest of our lives, no matter how long that may be.